Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another historical humans heritage. And today we are jumping to the other side of the Pacific Ocean and looking at Japan. More specifically, the Hiraizumi temples, gardens, and archaeological sites representing the Buddhist Pure Land. And if that isn't
Yes.
a mouthful, just wait till you hear more.
Yeah. So the Buddhist Pure Land comprises five sites at Hiraizumi, including a sacred mountain, Mount Kinkisan, as well as various government offices from the 11th and 12th centuries, as Hiraizumi was an administrative center of northern Japan that was a rival to the nation's actual capital uh, of Kyoto. Um, the landscape of Hirazume is primarily why it is included on the UNESCO World Heritage Site, as it is Buddhist Pure Land, which is a what's the word? Sort of religious
It's like an
mindset.
idealization of what the
Yeah,
Promised Land looks like.
yeah. But it's a sort of religious sect that came into Japan in the 8th century and fused with the native Shintoism of Japan to create a very unique look. This is, yeah, and the idea, like you said, is to recreate the cosmology of Nirvana in the landscape around you. Effectively, it's an active effort by human beings to create a verdant landscape by interacting with the landscape, which is kind of an inherent catch 22 because when you interact with something, it's no longer verdant.
But when you look at the images of this property, it is truly awe inspiring.
Yeah.
Like the one that they show on the front page, this blue pond with the colors reflecting and the peace. It truly is a very Zen garden.
It is, yeah, and it is a type of garden design that can only really be found in Japan and is primarily found here at Hirazume.
And then you've got the trees, the evergreens, and the cherry blossoms.
Yeah,
Ooh.
yeah, it's effectively recreating the goal of Pure Land Buddhism using the Japanese concepts of how gardens, water, hills, mountains, trees all should interact with each other, effectively creating a Japanese nirvana as opposed to that which would be found on mainland Asia,
Wow.
which is yeah, this would be the Japanese concept of nirvana, which is makes it inherently a unique cultural treasure.
And
Um,
then they have pictures of the temple, which is gorgeous.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
mhm. Yeah. It is. It's just beautiful. It's just breathtaking. The one temple that remains dates to the 12th century, so about 400 years after Pure Land Buddhism came to Japan. It is called Chusanji. I hope I'm saying that at least remotely uh,
And
correct. Probably not.
if not, let us know in the comments
No,
and be sure to roast him on his pronunciation.
please don't. I'm sure we we have people who understand Japanese. I don't need them attacking me publicly. Um,
They'll do it privately, I know that for sure.
yeah. Um, One of the beautiful things about this place is because it was so relatively short-lived. This city really only lasted about 200 years. It These gardens and the city in which they were originally incorporated were often the subject of poems throughout Japanese history, which gives them sort of that added cultural legacy of being the inspiration of other uh, art, other acts of beauty. Uh, in particular, the 17th century poet Matsuo Basho wrote about the site. He is one of the premier haiku poets of Japan, especially for his era. Yeah, it is. It's you know he might Uh, he's writing about this about 400 years after it disappeared, and it's still beautiful enough to warrant praise.
Which I don't know if you mentioned, but most of the site was most of the area was destroyed in 1189. So yeah, like 500 years before this poet came along.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because one does not simply challenge Kyoto and live, uh, as uh, as Hiraizumi found out.
Well, it's a good thing you could just walk into Mordor instead,
Yeah,
since you're
yeah.
reviving that old meme.
I was not reviving that old meme, but your mind went there anyway.
You literally said it verbatim, just changed two things.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
I, he's been he's been badgering me for the entire session, guys. Cut me some slack and post that meme in the comment section.
So the interesting thing about the authenticity of this site is that there's no doubt in the authenticity of the archaeology remains, but two of the gardens were reconstructed, and the thing that I find interesting is they tried to do it true to nature. So they did a lot of paleobotany studies. They looked at the seedlings and the microflora that were present in the soil, and they tried to reconstruct it based upon that, which is a very, very fascinating approach.
I think that should be a very thorough approach, especially for a garden, something where what's in the soil is paramount to what is there.
I mean, there's some degradation and some like the stuff could definitely decompose or be eaten or whatever. So it's not always 100%, but the way in which they did it is very interesting, and it's probably as accurate as you could get. And even further, they're still with under a lot of scrutiny as to what they're putting there. And one of the things I find very, very neat about this is they're working to show how the landscape works. This is very much a landscape archaeology type of episode, I guess, because the
Yeah,
landscape plays such a vital, virulent role in this.
yeah, yeah. Well, definitely, and yeah, well, definitely. And speaking of the scrutiny that they are under for the reconstruction of these gardens, the plans that are currently underway for excavating and reconstructing two other berry gardens within this site um, aren't just um, uh, aren't just subject to the World Heritage Committee for UNESCO, but also subject to ICOMOS, which is the International Council on Monuments and Sites. So it's multiple organizations have to agree that you are doing the absolute best possible to reconstruct this site true to what it was. It's not just one bureaucracy; it's several.
But it is very interesting, and it shows truly what a living, working heritage and history could look like, where we try to recreate the site but preserve its authenticity, because that's a lot of the argument for recreation is it loses authenticity. But it's just it's a fascinating look into Japanese culture, I guess, and I think their scrutiny to detail comes out even further with stuff like this.
Yeah, and it is beautiful. Like I believe we're looking at a reconstruction, the first image, but like it is inherently beautiful. Uh,
You
and
can almost see why they built it on that site.
yeah. Well, you have a sacred mountain. You're gonna use the sacred mountain.
Sacred mountain, sacred mountain. But yeah, I think that's a good point for us to wrap up this heritage episode. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to like down below and to subscribe so you can see all of our other videos that we release.